The biggest draw to Fortnite is the ability to build to keep you alive for longer in fights. But some people take cover in defense and throw them out the window, instead choosing to build giant and crazy structures that you probably never would believe unless you saw it yourself. Hey guys, ArcadeCloud here, and today we're counting down our top 10 craziest bases built in Fortnite. If you're new to our channel, go ahead and subscribe and hit that bell. Give this video a thumbs up and share it with some friends. It's free. Number 10, the castle. One of the most defensive structures to ever be built in the history of mankind is, of course, a castle. Usually castles were built on hills and surrounded by wide moats, with large towers for archers to stand at and fire volleys of arrows down at their enemies. The defensive properties of a castle don't really translate very well to the world of Fortnite Battle Royale. The basic principles are the same, and in theory they work pretty well, but the time and resources spent to build one just straight up outclasses the defensive benefits. Usually you're just better off throwing down a single tower for height advantage or letting a porta-fort nade loose if you have one. But those drawbacks didn't stop MM7 Games from building a pretty awesome castle anyway. It has everything you could expect from a castle, well, except for the moat. There were 4 strategically placed sniper towers and a wide open area in the castle to retreat to. Other than the height of the castle itself, it was pretty much the perfect defensive build. The defensive strengths of the castle were only further highlighted when they actually went on to win the entire game. Number 9, the tallest ever base. Towers. Towers are pretty much the first structure that everyone learns to build in Fortnite Battle Royale. Just a simple upward tower. Why would that be on a list of the craziest bases built in Fortnite? Because Muselk was part of a team that literally built the biggest and tallest tower known to Fortnite. They started in tilted towers because, I mean, if you're already gonna build a really tall tower, why not have it in a place where there's lots of really tall towers already? They used the big tower at the center of Tilted as their base, and then they just started building upward from there, creating one spiral staircase in the middle and then enclosing that in protective metal and stone as they went upwards. Eventually, of course, they reached the build limit of the game, the point where it stopped them from being able to go up higher. By this point, the zone was moving in and they were under heavy fire from enemies, and the very top of the tower even got shot off. But for one moment, they had the biggest tower in the history of Fortnite, and it looked pretty awesome. Number 8, Game Crashing Pyramid. Some builds are just so epic that the game can't even handle them. And that's exactly what happened when Imvolts and his friends decided to build the world's biggest Fortnite base ever made, a giant pyramid that managed to crash the game. After many attempts and many false starts where people tried to kill them or the zone came in and killed them, it was finally almost completed. A massive structure in the center of Wailing Woods that the game simply couldn't handle. After constructing as much of the 20 by 20 pyramid as they could, the game couldn't handle it anymore and completely crashed, stopping the guys who built it from moving anymore. This build was just too big, and even though it wasn't completely finished, the game just couldn't handle it. Number 7, a pirate ship. If you look at Loot Lake, what's the one thing that's obviously missing? If you thought a giant pirate ship, then you probably were listening to the last few seconds of audio. I did say it was going to be a pirate ship. There are plenty of little boats in the Loot Lake, but none of them are that big really, and I guess Vikkstar and his team wanted to fix that issue. It took a few attempts, but eventually they managed to create a giant ship in the center of Loot Lake with multiple levels and even a mast in the center of the top of the deck. It seems pretty crazy to think that building such a massive and obvious structure in the middle of Loot Lake could ever lead to a win, and to be honest, it doesn't for them. But they did manage to make it into the top 10 last people, and in a squads game that means they were basically only like 2 other teams alive. So for spending so much of their time making something so crazy, they still managed to pull out a pretty respectable position. Number 6, AT-AT Walker. There are pretty much 2 major movie franchises out there at the moment that almost everyone loves, Marvel and Star Wars. Marvel has already had some pretty good representation in Fortnite Battle Royale. I mean, look at that awesome new limited time mode where you could literally just turn into Thanos and run around blasting people with the Infinity Gauntlet. Star Wars hasn't had any representation in Fortnite except for when it comes to the fans. The legendary Fortnite builder 7 has completed many crazy builds since Fortnite released, and one of them was literally an AT-AT Walker from Star Wars. Sure, it kinda looks blocky, but that's just because of how the building tools in Fortnite work. Really, the AT-AT was a work of art, and it looked both massive and amazing. Number 5, Harry Potter Quidditch Pitch. It's not just Star Wars that 7 has gotten involved with recreating in Fortnite Battle Royale. In a more recent build, 7 and his team decided to recreate the iconic Quidditch pitch from the book and movie series Harry Potter. For those that don't know, which I don't know how you couldn't, Quidditch was a sport in Harry Potter where 2 teams of wizards would fly around on brooms trying to score points by throwing some balls through hoops. Kind of like flying basketball, I guess. While all that's going on, a couple of other wizards would be looking for a smaller, faster flying ball called the Golden Snitch. By the end of the build, the Quidditch pitch that 7 and his team managed to construct looked scarily like the Quidditch pitch from the movies, from the hoop stands down to the place where you would sit to watch the game. Oh, and they even managed to win the game at the end. Sounds like magic to me. Number 4, biggest plane. 7 isn't just limited to movies or pop culture references though. This legendary Fortnite builder likes to remake things from the real world too. In this clip, 7 and his team decided to create the biggest plane in Fortnite Battle Royale. It took them hours of attempts to build. They always dropped down into Wailing Woods to get the crazy amount of materials they needed, and most of the time they got killed by other players or taken out by the zone. But eventually the stars aligned and they managed to pull off the impossible. By the end they had a giant plane complete with wings and a cockpit soaring majestically above the tops of the trees in Wailing Woods. And once again, as 7 so often does in these challenges, he managed to come out on top as the winner of the game. Number 3, triangles only. There's a lot of underused building mechanics in Fortnite, and one of them is probably a triangular wall. As you all know, there's a pyramid block in the game, and if you edit the block, it basically turns into a slanted triangle. Well, Muselk wanted to build an entire base purely out of these blocks. They built a gigantic tower of triangles that basically ended up looking like a giant maze in the sky. What's kind of crazy is that this style of base kind of makes logical sense from a building and tactics standpoint. There's a lot of connecting points in the base, which means it's basically impossible to knock down and destroy, and because the blocks are strangely shaped, they're also stranger to hit than usual. All I have to wonder is what the other guy in the game thought was happening. Number 2, the Port-a-Fort Tower. When Port-a-Forts were first added into the game in April, we were all pretty worried about them being way too strong. It turns out they're only seriously strong if you have a lot of them at once. In a game that Muselk probably intended to just be playing a normal and average game, he ended up finding a whole bunch of Port-a-Fort grenades. Most people decide to use these Port-a-Forts in a pretty logical and, let's admit it, pretty boring way, using one and then saving the others for later. Instead, Muselk decides to take Port-a-Forting to the next level, and he made a tower of the things. At first it only looked like Muselk was going to be able to pull off the double Port-a-Fort base, which, while cool, isn't exactly crazy. But then it happened. He found a third Port-a-Fort grenade and was able to ascend up to a third and even higher point. Until someone manages to stack 4 Port-a-Forts at once, this Port-a-Fort tower is pretty top tier. Number 1, saving Dusty Depot. Can we just have a moment of silence for a second? At the end of Season 3, something terrible happened. A meteor came streaking down from the sky and obliterated the area we all knew as Dusty Depot. While, yes, a new and interesting area was left behind in the form of Dusty Divot, it changed the face of the map forever, scarring it with a massive hole. Some people were not content in letting that area be crushed by the flaming rock from the stars, and instead wrapped it in a protective pyramid, covering the entire area from top to bottom in materials. SRK and his team jumped into a game of 50v50 to complete their crazy task. But the craziest part of all is the fact that people on the enemy team saw what was happening and actually helped them to save the area instead of fighting them. Teaming like this is risky considering how strict Epic Games is on banning people for teaming, but it was worth it to attempt to save a now forgotten part of the map. And there you have it, our list of the top 10 craziest bases built in Fortnite. Do you agree? Did we miss something? Let us know in the comments down below, and don't forget to subscribe for more great videos from Arcade Cloud on Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays. Take care and game on.